Chase death, Moonbeam, and I pray your bloodlust brings you the same sense of peace I feel just knowing you exist.
Welcome to the Busy Girls Book Club. We are a podcast bringing you the reviews and updates on the internet's favorite books. We are three fellow busy girls and want to help you guys decide what you read. I'm Casey.
I'm Caitlin.
And I'm Catherine. So this week we are reading quite a thick book. It's When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. And the book itself, while thick, reads pretty quickly. It is this up-and-coming hot fantasy novel that has been taking TikTok by storm. People have been requesting it as kind of a substitution for Fourth Wing if you have a Fourth Wing withdrawal. I mean, Caitlin's shaking her head, but people are saying because dragons.
There are dragons. It is nothing like Fourth Wing.
No, it is not. But I feel like people do it anyway because it has dragons in it. So the book itself has a very unique world. It's not anything you've kind of seen in fantasy. And it's set around a main character named Rave, who is an assassin in the middle part of the world that is kind of surrounded. It's separated into three parts with three different dragons living in the three different areas. And Rave doesn't really have a lot of memories of the world. She just kind of exists in the moment and lives in the moment and is trying to bring down this tyranny of the king and the king's system. And that's kind of where we meet her, where she's trying to get by, but also fighting against a very unfair system. And then she kind of gets captured and goes on this weird adventure of discovering who she is and what place she falls in the world. But basically, the dragons are the main part of the story where when they die, instead of going towards the earth, they create moons. They fall towards the sky. And so the whole sky is littered with dead dragons, if that makes any sense. It really doesn't make much sense when I say it out loud. That's why the start of the book has a very weird thesaurus, where it's just very long and very in-depth of what you're supposed to learn from this book. I'm having a hard time actually fully describing this book, so let's just get into it.
All right. Well, do y'all have reviews?
The reviews for this one were so 50-50 split, like the written ones. They were either like, this is the best book I've ever read, or like, what the heck was this? I found a 2-star. Help me understand this book because I'm lost. The only reason I'm giving this book 2 stars is because I picture Khan looking like Jason Momoa in Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
That's fun. Yeah. Do you want to go, Catherine? I have a bunch.
Okay, yeah. Of course you have a bunch. I have a 1-star review, and I'm only going to read the top part of it because it's kind of like the topic sentence of her review is very funny. And it says, if I were Dante, the reading of this book would be one of my circles of hell. I suffered, and When the Moon Hatched might have convinced me to finally start rating DNFs.
I saw that one.
First of all, you can't rate DNFs, but wow.
Apparently you can.
Okay, I have a bunch of random 1-stars. The first one, did the author receive a bonus for every adjective used, or did every single item in this book require further description? Also, I am begging authors to stop spelling normal words like Utah names to make it seem more creative. Grandpa and grandma does not give you any world building cred.
I do agree. The grandpa and grandma was kind of stupid in the spelling.
D-A-E. I was like, oh, nice. We're different now.
Yeah.
Okay. This book made me angry. I couldn't even really finish it. I skimmed the last 100 to 150 pages. I could not care less anymore. Everything is vague. I still don't understand almost anything. Maybe the worst book of the year. Yeah. How to say the most words while saying nothing at all. A 718-page clusterfuck. And the one that describes, I think, my opinion the most, the gradual decrease of this book going from 5 stars to 1 stars needs to be studied.
Damn.
I'm so afraid.
We kind of know how Casey's gonna fall in this book, but Let's start with the overall Goodreads rating, which is a 4.1 out of 5. So it actually is a very highly rated book on this app. And then in Amazon, it's a 4.5 out of 5. So let's get into it. What did you rate this book?
You guys want to go first or last?
You should go first.
Okay. I gave it 2 stars.
Oh God.
Yeah, I feel exactly the same way about this book as I felt about Prior of the Orange Tree, where everyone loved that book and I finished reading it and I was like, what the actual fuck is happening? I could not tell you to this day what the point of the book was. It was 718 pages, no plot, almost zero character development. I don't know what the point of it was. The whole first 200 pages of the book are totally useless to the whole rest of the book. Like, I actually don't know why they were in the book. Like, they don't matter at all. And I just felt like this book was so disorganized. And it's not like I hate, okay, so one of my biggest things is the writing style. I really, really did not like the writing style. I think you're hard pressed to find a single paragraph in the book without a metaphor in it. And I felt like she was just saying stuff. I was like, metaphors are supposed to mean something. And it made it really, really hard for me to get into the book in the first place because I was like, what do these words mean? Why are you using them? They don't mean anything. Why is everything like shattered glass and ice shards in your heart? If you use it over and over again, it doesn't mean anything. So I hated the way it was written. It was super disorganized. And the whole time, like nothing happens. You make no movement in any direction. In the world building, I was like, I don't think you even learn that there's 3 kings who are brothers until 75% of the way through the book. I was like, oh, that would have been nice to know. That there's these separate worlds, but actually one of them isn't as connected to the other worlds as the other ones. Like, it's be good to know how long Fae live. Are they immortal in this world? I don't even know. What's the other, like, it seems like Fae rule everything. What do these other creatures do? Like, I have literally no idea how the world works. I have no idea how the magic system works. They just say words and things happen. And apparently also it felt like every time the author wanted to do something, she just made up a new power. I was like, oh, I guess these people exist too. Cool. It was a disaster. It was like a mess. I was like, what is happening? I don't know anything about the world. I still know nothing about the world and I still know nothing about the character. I don't know why I read this book.
Okay.
Sorry, that was too much. You can cut that down because I'm just like incensed.
No, we're keeping all of that because tell us how you really feel.
I feel like a mad woman. I'm like, what's happening?
I've never seen you this mad.
I made a TikTok about this book, which you're not on TikToks. If you didn't see it, Catherine has seen it, and I literally just said the opposite of everything you said.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just go. I gave it 5 stars. I thought the world building was fantastic. Guess we were experiencing different books. I don't know. I knew about the 3 brothers. Also, it said it in literally the glossary when I referenced people's names, so maybe that helped.
Why do you have to read the glossary? Why?
Because it's an epic fantasy. I had to go reference. I'd see a name and be like, I forget who this is, and I'd go back until I figured it out, like 30% in. I will give you the world of the Fade felt very disconnected, like the other creatures and stuff from the rest of it. However, I didn't care. I liked all her descriptions. I can tell you why it was always like ice in her heart because I think that's one of the plot twists that's coming.
We don't need it every paragraph.
I know.
You could take a break.
I didn't mind. I liked her writing. The main character sucked, okay? Like, she did. She sucked.
Hard agree.
Also, I'm sorry, this is an SJM ripoff. Like, if you read Silver Flame, you've seen it before. That's how I feel.
Is it?
Every character is from SJM. Like, we can do this later because too much of it is spoilers, but like every single member of like Khan's group is an ACOTAR character.
I don't know about that. And I think a lot of fantasies kind of have these main types of characters anyway, but I don't know. I liked the world. I liked the concept of the dragons and becoming moons, and you find out why that's kind of important. I understood the magic system. I don't know. I liked it. It was unique. It was cozy. It kind of made me feel things at points, which apparently Casey did not. Um, I think I know where it's going for book two. I figured out most of the stuff, I think. There's one key question I still have, but I love an epic fantasy with an assassin main character woman who's grouchy and meets, her potentially fated mate, Dark Daddy. Um, yeah, that's that. It
Yeah.
was written for me.
Let's be real. It was written for both of us because I also gave it 5 stars. I read this first before both of them, and I actually thought you would enjoy this one, Casey. So shocker to me.
After the fifth season, I really thought she'd like it.
Yeah.
We can get into this in the non-spoiler section, but the fifth season did what this author is trying to do so well. And then this author did it. And like, I felt like the whole 70% of the book, I was like, what is happening? We have nothing. We have no information about this character. And then we get like 3 drops at the very end. I just felt like I was confused the whole time.
I will say, yes. I don't know if the author totally executed
and
the
the
time
big
jumps.
We all know the whole time. Like,
yes,
it's obvious. So I was like, what you like edged me for 700 pages for.
So I will say,
people in the reviews who did not get it.
Yeah, the people who didn't get it, like, they don't read a lot of fantasy. I can tell because did I guess basically all of the twists? Yes, I did. Indeed, I did. I didn't mind it though, because at this point, I feel like I guess most of the tropes and twists in most books I read. Like, it's just a thing. Like, I guessed it in 5th season.
We read so many books, it's hard to surprise us.
Especially really obvious.
Oh my God.
Oh my God, Casey. No, you're good. So yes, I didn't mind it. And I don't need to love the main character. Like, that's not a thing. I like morally gray main characters. I don't know if this one was totally morally gray. She's just kind of bratty at times.
Yeah.
But but I don't have to be in love with the main character to enjoy the novel. I just have to be entranced by the world, which I was. And I read the full glossary before I read any of the first few pages. That helped a shit ton. I'm glad it was in the front and not the back, because if this was at the back, you wouldn't be able to understand what was going on.
She did tuck the family tree at the back, which made sense why.
Yes. And so I understood that it was the 3 brothers ruling the 3 kingdoms, but it was a recent thing that happened. And so I kind of just, I assumed it was a usurping, that they were the tyrants, they're the villains of the story. And then I guess that Khan was going to be her fated mate, like, kind of thing. Yeah, like, those things are obvious. And, I still enjoyed it. And I still enjoyed the world. And I enjoyed the Dark Shadow Daddy. And I enjoyed the journey. And I'm definitely am going to read the next book. So, I mean, we could not be on different directions on this.
I know. I saw y'all's reviews and I was like, here we go. This is going to be bad.
We are recording this on January 1st. So we made it 0 days without Casey fighting us over a fantasy book.
Look, I'll say one more thing. If you have to read the glossary and the glossary helps, it's because the world building is bad. The author is supposed to tell you. You're supposed to learn as you go. Okay. Anyway, so non-spoiler discussion, more plot or character driven?
It's
I
plot.
said character.
Really?
There's no... She's trying to not remember who she is. She's avoiding that. But, like, the whole thing is about... She's got, like, missing memories, and she's trying to eke out this living, and then she's seeking revenge for something that happens, and does not give a crap what anyone else wants to do in the story. So...
But my problem with that is at the end, she still doesn't know who she is. Like, she's in the exact same place.
She's not accepting who she is, but she knows who she is.
Yeah, but she also doesn't. Like, there's all these things at the end of the book where she's still like, I don't know how any of this happened, and I'm just not going to think about it. And I was like, oh, so we learned nothing.
debatable, but that's for the spoiler section.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I feel like it's plot driven because she's not really in control that much. Like, she's kind of forced into things that she didn't necessarily want. I think she has character development, despite what Casey wants to say.
I think she develops a little bit. I just think like we spent 700 pages on that, you know?
Yeah, I mean, yes. Is it a really long
I
book? And
said
could
the
it
main
be?
character sucks. Like, I will
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah, I totally
Sucks.
agree. I mean, it's a long book. Like, let's be real. It's long, but it reads a lot shorter than it actually is. I also agree that it could have been cut down.
I also found it a little bit unique that, like, the main character didn't really know who she was, but didn't care. Like, we read so many fantasy books where they're like the secret heir or whatever to some throne and they're trying to discover who their history. And she's just like, nope, I'm gonna go kill some people. So it was different in that aspect, at least.
I
No
don't know.
Aelin, that's for sure.
I didn't think it was that different just because like in the Jasad heir, she knows who she is, so it's a little different, but she's also like a reluctant hero. I feel like we've read a few books at this point where the hero has been like very against their will coming to claim their title. I mean, even Aelin is like that for a long time. Um, and so I don't know. I thought that was fine. I want to be clear, I actually loved the magic at first. And I thought that we would learn a lot more about how it worked. And then I felt like we didn't. And then I felt like we would learn a lot more about dragons and their bond with people. And then we didn't. And then I felt like we would learn a lot more about the political system and how this all works and what happened to her kingdom. And then we didn't. And then I was kind of like, okay, so what are we doing this for?
I think we can get into that in the spoiler section because I do have an idea about that.
It's so wild you saying all these things, but loving the fifth season. It is
Because the
wild.
fifth season drops these ideas for you as you go. I felt like the
You
whole
also
time,
learn nothing.
but you learn everything and nothing at the same time because it's like crumbs you along. What you know at the beginning of the fifth season, what you know at the end is like totally different. And the author did it so like deliberately and beautifully. This author, I feel like this is actually what I really think is this book needed an editor so bad. Like I think the editing of this book is horrible, which is also something we can get into because there are so many things that I just think would have made the book better. Um, Anyway, I don't even know what question we're on anymore, but have you read other books by the author?
I have
No,
not.
but I'll
Yeah.
read book 2 because I loved it.
And I think book 2 comes out in February.
Oh.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
And then how was the pacing, Catherine? I feel like you have had some interesting experience with this because I hated the pacing.
Yeah, I mean, okay. I don't know if necessarily the pacing like is amazing or anything, but I read this in 3 days, and this looks daunting because I had the hardcover, so I could see how fat the book was. I read it in 3 days because I just couldn't really put it down, so I didn't mind the pacing. It's not like flawless pacing, though. I'll say that.
I also read it in 3 days. Granted, that's over the holidays when I had time to just sit and read. But also, like, I didn't feel like I spent that much time reading it for how long it was. But like, there are definitely disjointed parts a little bit. And then she does use a lot of words that maybe don't need to be there. Lots of descriptions and things. I thought it was fine. Like, if you're picking up a fat epic fantasy book, you know what you're gonna walk into.
Oh,
I
sorry.
mean,
I was incorrect. It comes out October 7th, 2025.
oh, that makes sense. I mean, I assume it's going to be long, so I was surprised.
Actually, 350 pages. No,
Oh my God, I thought that was real. I was like, oh my God.
that's so
Um,
funny.
no, I mean, it took me a while to read. I think it took me a week. And there were parts of the book I really enjoyed, and then parts of the book where I really didn't enjoy, or lots of parts of the book that I enjoyed, but I just wasn't sure what they all connected to or why they were in the book and like what we were supposed to learn from them. Um, like, I mean, I felt like this book was like written with kind of almost like purposelessness, like we were just on a journey, but I was just like waiting for a lot of development that didn't happen. And so then I got frustrated with the book and I was like, I don't understand why we keep reading these things. And like, it doesn't really bring us to like a different place or like show us anything meaningful. And so then I started to get annoyed and I was like, I just don't understand like the journey that we're on here and like what the point of it is. And some of the scenes, I was like, okay. Like I was just like, I just would have cut a lot out. And like you guys know, I always say this, like I feel like if the book is long, every scene has to be worth it. Like there should be a reason why every scene is in the book. And I was like, you're wasting my time. And so by the end, I was just skimming. I was like, please just, I just want to be out of this.
To be fair, this book isn't just a fantasy, it's a romantasy. It's part romance, part fantasy. And you're not a huge romance person, to be fair.
Not. But I loved Silver Flame. Yeah, I love Silver Flame, even though that book was a disaster and I know it.
Like, I didn't like that book. I like this one.
Part of the problem to me is the fantasy elements of the book and the romance elements of the book and scenes and like parts where that is supposed to be developed felt very separate to me. It didn't feel like they were happening at the same time. And to me, that created a lot of wasted space and wasted scenes. And I didn't think she was getting a lot of utility out of like the words in the scenes. And so I was just like, I finished the book angry about the length. That's just how I felt.
Okay.
We can tell.
Yeah. Okay. Would you watch a movie or TV show about the book?
Nah.
Yeah, I'm a hard maybe.
I think maybe after book 2, it would be easier to like construct a movie. But I think it depends on where this is going.
I mean, we always say this. It gives Game of Thrones, which is a whole lot of not doing anything for most of the series, but it's just a cool world. But yeah, I don't know. It'd be a confusing movie. It's made for people who love epic wandering fantasy books like Lord of the Rings and stuff like that.
Yeah. All right, Busy Girl rating.
I'll give it a 3 because I think it is a faster paced book than you think it is, but when you're looking at it, it can be pretty daunting. And to be fair, no one really, if you have a busy schedule, you probably don't have that much time for a 700 plus book. So yeah, I'll give it a 3.
I was actually gonna give it a 2 just because like it's not for everyone and it is so long. And if it's not the holiday season, it probably would have taken me a little longer to read. But yeah, 5 quality, 2 busy girl for me.
I'm also sticking with 2. I just thought it was long. That's all.
Fair enough. I guess we're ready for the spoiler alert section. So Casey can truly go off despite going off in the non-spoiler section.
I'm so mad. Like
I'm so scared.
I also just want to say part of the reason I'm so mad is because I feel like I haven't emphasized enough at this point, like the things about the book that I really liked. I thought there were a lot of really good things in this book, and that's why I'm so angry, is I feel like she kind of fumbled the bag, but it could have been really good. Obviously, you guys thought it was really good as is, but like there were things in this book that I loved, and then I just felt disappointed with like where they went and what the author did with them. And so it's like, it's not about just like lack of creativity. This author is clearly super creative. It's not about like bad characters, even though the main character, yes, is fucking horrible. Like I thought like there was a lot of really well-written chemistry. Like it's not just like lack of interesting things. It's like as a story, I didn't think it worked, and that was disappointing. But there's good things in the book.
Okay, so this is the spoiler alert section. So please stop here if you haven't read the book and you don't want to be spoiled for the future book or any kind of plot twists that happen in this book. I just want, this is not on our list, but I want to kind of defend something that Casey said in the non-spoiler section. So you mentioned like you wished to know more about the dragons, you wished you knew more about the magic system. I guess I'm giving this book a lot of grace because I'm hoping, because I believe the second book is the Ballad of Falling Dragons. So I truly think that she is going to get into that. in the second book. And that's my hope.
I don't think it's that complicated. It had that little story at the beginning.
But how do dragons bond with people, and how do they decide to do that? What happens when what happens
they kidnapped him? Yeah,
it mentions in the book adult dragons can also bond. So that happens to the princess. So I was like, why do dragons decide to bond with humans? I don't understand like why they do it, because if you steal an egg, it makes sense because you're like their mom now. But it's like, why does an adult dragon decide to bond with a rider? And what happens to dragons in captivity? They like never really address what happens when like, because there's this whole like mating thing at the end. And I was like, so do dragons who are bonded mate? I don't understand if they mate. I don't understand what happens to their children. Do only unbonded dragons mate and produce a child? I don't understand why, if so many people have dragons, it's so hard to get a dragon egg. Like, aren't there dragons everywhere? Also, it made it sound really hard to do. And then tons of people had dragons. And so I was like, well, it can't be that hard to do. I mean, do you see what I mean? I was just like,
I
see why dragons do this.
Yes, like I had a few questions, but I just don't think they were that important at the present moment to like make me dislike the story.
The dragons, I was fine with being in the background because dragons only even show up when Khan shows up. Like, she doesn't have a dragon, or implied that she will have a dragon until the end. But the bigger issue to me was the political system and the magic system. I was like, okay, so super interesting concept that gods like speak to you and choose people, and then these people get these powers from like learning the gods' language. But then it seems like there's this whole dynamic where like the gods like choose to like help you or not. And I was like, okay, so why are certain people chosen? Do the gods care who's chosen? It seems like almost completely random, because like they'll like a person with a clear bead will fight another person with a clear bead. And so I was like, okay, so does the god want that to happen? I don't understand the god's influence in all this. Like, the character will like pray for Claude to like, you know, be on her side, and is like afraid that one day Claude will just take it away. So I was like, okay, so does that happen? Like, do you need the god to keep like granting you permission? Like, do you have to have them listening to you? I don't understand that. Also, what can you even do with this power? The whole time she does one thing. She only like uses the air to like silence people. And so I was like, what does this actually look like in battle and fighting? Do people fight? Like, there's never an actual battle scene where people like fight each other with elemental powers. I was like, okay, so what can people with rain even do? What can people with boulder even do? Can they build things? How skilled do you have to be? I feel like we have literally no information about how this actually looks. Then you get all these like secondary expertise that come in later and are barely mentioned, like being able to write runes. And I was like, wait, I'm sorry, do you need a god for that? No, you just have to be magically blessed. How does that happen? How do people learn how to write runes? Magically, some people have dragon sight. I was like, okay, so that just means you can see runes. Does that mean anything that's been runed, you can see the runes on it? Any person who's ever been healed, you can see their healing? Like, I felt like so confused.
I think, yeah, it's just you're born with this stuff. I guess that's how I interpreted it. And I, once again, just didn't care that much in the details.
You almost never, they have these powers.
Like, you had enough information to have the story work. Like, I don't.
But then it's not in the story. There's no point in it being there. They never use it. They use it like 4 times in the whole book.
I understand what you're saying, because like you want the answers to these questions and it's not answered in this book. I guess I think of this as, I mean, the gods are a form of religion, and there's a lot of mystery to religion that is, you don't really know what happens in the next life. You don't know what happens in the elements and in Mother Nature and in stuff like that. So I kind of just accepted it as an unknown quantity or entity, an unknown entity, until we actually talk to the gods. And I think that's coming up because we see how the ether stones and how she managed to eradicate herself of the ether stone that was draining her and draining her power. Died. Yes, but
her daughter wants to take it off. And
she's in love with allegedly the god in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but also the dragon, or I assume it's a dragon who's in her brain. That's the other thing, is the other
It's her dragon.
seems epic and then is around twice, seemingly bizarrely. Why is he there? Why is like he or she just sporadically appearing? What's the difference between when she appears and not appears? Because it's super convenient that she's there and then disappears the entire book.
Well, I think the idea was that when she enters into her icy lake and goes beneath its surface, where she's hiding all of her memories and hiding all of her former self because it's too painful, that's when her dragon comes out.
But it doesn't seem like she gets to choose. Like the first time when it
No,
happened,
I
she
think
was
it's
like,
that her dragon carried her up into the sky, and it mentioned at one point, like, poured herself into Elwyn to, in the sky. And so I think that brought Elwyn back. However, it also brought back the dragon in some form within her. And I think it's when she's in the most peril or needs this revenge that she calls Elwyn the one she loves. And so I think it's her coming out to defend the one she loves.
but she almost dies multiple times, no appearance of the dragon. Like that guy almost kills her with poison and is like bashing her head in the thing, and the dragon's
That's
nowhere to
simply
be
because it
found.
made more fun for Khan to show up in that instance.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. Is it just feels like a complete convenient. It's all about convenience. It's not about any established rules or how anything works. Like I don't understand how anything works. And her dragon can just magically stop her from being able to talk to the fire god. I was like, oh, that's convenient.
I think she just hasn't remembered she has that one yet.
No, the dragon says, I've stopped her from being able to speak to the flame.
Right. I think it's kept her from remembering that one.
But how does that work? The dragon can just stop her from remembering things now?
They're clearly sharing some mind space.
Yeah,
so
but that's the problem.
I don't know. We don't
Why
officially know
introduce
that that's her
Why
dragon, so we
introduce
don't know
it?
that yet.
If it's in the book, you have to do something with it. You can't just be like, this is here, and now we're going to forget about it for 700 pages.
That's literally the entire 5th season in that book you loved.
No, every single thing in the 5th season comes up over and over and over again, and it's a purpose that it's the mystery. And the author makes the book interesting by constantly giving you a little more and a little more and a little more. This author just introduces things, forgets about it until it's convenient, and then it's around again. And it's like, okay, cool.
Well, you could make the same argument for SJM. She does the same thing.
Yes, no, and we have all complained about this in her recent books. It's annoying.
I think it's like the point of the book, though, is you're not supposed to know all the answers immediately if it's a fantasy that's going to be a saga.
A series, yeah.
But this is my part of my problem that I'm now having with a lot of fantasy books is the art of writing one book is gone. To write a series, to write a series, one book still has to be a standalone book. It has to be a good book. And you are supposed to introduce elements that become more fleshed out in the future, but you're not supposed to just plop something down and then be like, and we'll explain this next time. So just forget about it and don't think about it. Like if you introduce something in the book, it has to matter. It has to be important. It has to be a theme. It has to show up. Like, and even if you don't know the answers, like even if you don't know the answers, it still has to keep appearing. And there has to be something on the works and some rules and idea behind how it works that is explained or at least explored. And I just felt like she was just like, this is how it works. Don't ask questions. And I was like, well, I have a lot of questions because you haven't explained anything.
Well, some of us are fine with this is how it works and don't ask questions. So anyway, we're going to move on from this part because it's gotten long and Catherine's eyes are glazing over.
Hey.
Oh.
Okay. Well, I don't even know where to start in our question list because
we've kind of covered a lot of them in that long ass rant.
We really did. And how about we've heard a lot of the negatives. Catherine, for a moment, how about you and I talk about some of the positives for the listeners who like this sort of thing?
Sounds great.
I liked all the little Easter eggs personally, and I thought of them as Easter eggs, and I feel like I figured most of the things out. Questions I still have is who was Fallon, and also why at this one point it says the girl with the dragon's head can tell she's been stabbed, but that one wasn't healed. So like, how did she actually die? It wasn't probably childbirth. No. So there's that. But I feel like we had enough to kind of figure out she had this daughter that maybe Khan keeps saying there's someone else who needs you, so maybe he knows and never told anyone, but like his sister didn't know, so that's kind of dramatic. Um, I don't know. I thought it was fun. She ended up in all the different parts of the world at some point. So we already have a little like base knowledge of the whole world. But I don't know. I liked it and I love the romance.
Yeah. I love the romance. And I think the world building in itself, yes. Are there a lot of questions that need to be answered? Absolutely. But I liked that in this book, we got to explore all three worlds, although I do want to go more in depth into the shade once we start to try to find Kasari and try to find, and try to take her crown back, essentially. I liked that we got to see at least some of the worlds. And I liked her kind of flowy writing of like descriptions. I felt like I knew the places that we were at. I felt like I was interested and invested in each of the places. And I wanted to know more about this world because I'd never seen anything like this before. So it was a fresh, new set of things. And I guess I'm okay with having unanswered questions in this sense. And yes, do I agree that we need to get back to more of writing one book? Yeah, I think authors do tend to write series because it's what makes them money and it's what makes the publishing houses money. And do I love that? Not necessarily, because you can't keep up with every single series. Like, it's just not physically possible. And the art of the standalone does need to be brought back up. What I'm okay with is because this book has enough interesting qualities and has enough interesting characters and interesting questions to lead me into the next book and to actually get me excited about learning the answers, even though I have my theories and I have my ideas. It's a lot like Fourth Wing for me, where it's like, I had questions at the end of Fourth Wing. I had questions at the end of Iron Flame, but I'm okay with those being unanswered because I want those questions answered in the next book. And there's a hope in me that those questions are answered in the next book. And if they aren't, then I'll be thoroughly disappointed.
Right, like if all the questions are answered in the first book, why read the second, you know? So I understand if you have the story that's going to arc over, more than one book, like I understand why to leave some things unanswered. And I understand what you're saying. I guess Catherine and I are just a little bit more flexible in what we allow because we're just way more into this genre in romantasy. Like that's just our thing. That's the difference is we like something different. But I do think, most people, when you look at the reviews, are fine with not having their questions answered in like the romance and like Khan. And even if the main character, she does suck, but she has potential.
Well, and I also liked that it was a flipping narrative perspectives and it wasn't overwhelming flipping narrative perspectives. It was mostly rave, but then we had glimpses and moments of Elowen's diaries, of Khan, of others in the world. And I think that's what made it kind of interesting because it broadened the world out a bit without overwhelming us with tons of character perspectives. I can see Casey just seething quietly.
I'm not seething. I'm just like, fine.
I mean, we have to discuss the book without just totally only going negative on it because
no, I know.
And you guys definitely liked it.
I know. And you guys should get to talk about it.
I mean, yeah. I forgot what I was going to say.
What did you think about? So I wasn't a huge fan of other POVs popping in just because so many of them were from her. I understood what they did for the story. And I wasn't confused. I just think they were kind of random, especially at the end. It was like a hodgepodge. Like I understood the other and I understood the diary entries. I understood to some extent Khan, but like the others, I'm like, I don't know. So
but
I will.
If we didn't get Vea's point of view, we would have never seen the shade.
Correct. Well, I think you would have seen it eventually, but like I just think they were fine. They weren't my favorite.
Yeah. I didn't think they needed to be in the book really. Like we just spent a lot. I agree with you. Like I just thought they felt a little random at times. And I didn't think they necessarily introduced like a ton of necessary information.
Yeah,
I
and
guess
at the end it introduced a new character, which I feel like could have just been left for the next book.
yeah.
It was a good
Also,
cliffhanger, I guess, but
this part isn't the author's fault, but on Kindle, the words where they actually tell you what character's perspective it is are super small. And so
oh.
multiple times I started reading the next chapter being like, what the fuck is happening? And then I was like, oh, this is a different person.
Oh, no, actually they
Oh,
are small in the book.
Yeah.
they are
And I
small in the
didn't know
book.
to look at them at first.
It was actually extremely annoying. Like there was one chapter I had to go back because I had read it and I was like, none of this makes any sense. And then I was like, oh wait, that was that was not Rave. Okay, now
Yeah.
that
So
makes a lot of sense.
that's a publishing editing issue of just not
Yeah.
formatting things correctly. I agree. No, it was really confusing at times because it was super small font. So maybe do better in the next book. But I'm just glad it wasn't chapter after chapter changing character perspectives, because I've seen that so many fucking times in so many fantasy books, and it just gets overwhelming, confusing, and annoying.
Right. And SJM does that in Throne of Glass, especially. And you get the whole story because of it, but also I kind of didn't like it.
Yeah.
So it's just, I guess, user preference, but yeah. What about, let's talk about Khan. Sweet Khan, puppy love, can't get over the fact that this girl does not remember him. Are they fated mates? We still don't know, but it kind of seems like it. What do we think about our sweetheart sick Khan and him trying to bring back Eluin?
I loved Khan. He was the highlight of the book for me. He was so sweet. Of course, he was like an iconic dark daddy. I did feel that he was Cassian. However, I love Cassian, so I was willing to let it go. The thing that was really missing for me was the discussion of like how is Rave different from Eluin? Like he tries so hard to save her and to like help her and just like have that connection with her. And you can tell that because you have so much of Rave's perspective that you can tell that there is still like this undeniable like bond and connection between them. But it's also just like, I don't know, she literally died. And when she came back, it felt like everyone just accepted it. And I was like, someone literally reappears, is the person who died. She comes back. You have no idea how or why, and no one has any questions about that. We all just move on. I was like,
I feel like all his friends did have questions and like his sister, but he made them not ask them.
yeah, they just don't do anything about it. I was like, you don't have any questions as to why
Well,
she's
his sister
back?
goes to get the journal, so she has
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah.
So I think he realizes he's not going to get the questions answered from her directly because she's not willing and refusing to go into her memories.
Because she's a different person. And I feel like there was no narrative about why and like what's different about her and like what was Eluin like versus Rave. Because her diary entries, I also just, they introduced really important plot points. So that was good. But I like, she seemed like super demure. And I was like, that is not like Rave at all. And then we get a few scenes where she's like really feisty. And I was like, is she like Rave? Like, I was just like, I
Well,
was
I
sort
think
of,
she learns to fight from the sister.
yeah.
And so that, like, it's there, but it's not, she's kind of just, yeah, I feel like as the princess, she just kind of is stuck and does what she is told. I think the personality switch must have come when she came back and maybe comes from her spicy dragon a little bit inside of her. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, she has a dual personality essentially and has a dark being.
And was
Allegedly.
apparently tortured in the fighting pits.
Yeah, so I think
probably...
this is an issue of nature versus nurture, and she had a very different life in her first life and a very different life in her second life, one that was a lot harder and full of not love but survival. So that can change a person, and that changes how you interact with the world. And I think he kind of mentions how Khan does, like, you two are different, but I see your similarities. Like there's moments and there's glimmers of both in there where it's just they have their moments where they do similar things or they act similar ways, or their pride or their bravery or their willingness to fight for family. Like there's core being similarities, but different ways how they interact with the world because of how they were treated in society. And I will say, I'm very interested in the Scavenger King and in Firelark and in her other persona that she used into fighting pits. Like that's very interesting to me.
That, you know, Konstad was clearly a hoe, so we should have known there was like a bastard son somewhere.
Yeah.
How he has Kaisari, interesting. When she received knee at the end,
My heart broke
Yeah.
because I knew what it said, and it says, I need you. It's like, no, you don't.
and she wrote, "No, I don't."
Yeah.
But it is interesting because now Kaisari knows her mom's alive because it came
Yeah.
back.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I guess I did feel like the romance was hard for me to buy into because the whole time I was like, she's appeared from the dead and she's a different person. But her inability to like reckon with that prevented like any meaningful conversation from happening. And I was like, okay, so you guys are in love, but this is like a different.
Well, I wouldn't say they're in love. That's not something I would say.
She likes
says
having sex with him.
Yeah.
He says that he loves her.
Well, he
was
loves the former her. I think he hasn't come to reckon with she's not the same, and she hasn't reckoned with like there is this other person that she now has to like help these people understand. She's not that person now.
Yeah.
So like it's all
They
it's
have
tricky.
to fall in love again. They're working through it.
Right. But then I was like, I don't know, all these fucking scenes are kind of hard to read though.
I will say the scene where he showed her where he was piecing together her dragon ripped my heart out and stomped on it. That was like
I cried.
Broke my heart.
And then she ran away and I was like, I don't know if I can read anymore.
Broke my heart. But that is another thing where I was like, then she starts having memories. And I just thought that would be more of a climax point in the book.
I did too.
I was
Same.
really, and also it seems like, oh, she's only having memories of their life together. And I was like, I'm sorry, if you're having memories of that, like you can't just choose which memories come through. Like, does it all not come back? Do other things not come back? Like, I feel like in most scenarios, like even victims of trauma, like you have one trigger and then all this stuff comes and you're not really sure what to do with it. And I was like, oh, you only get the good memories of Khan and you fucking? That just seems kind of like.
I mean, she had memories of fire, like being tortured. I don't know. It's fantasy. I feel like you can choose what comes back and what doesn't.
Yeah, I don't know. I was like, I feel like you see your old dragon and you still are like, I can't, I don't know what's going on. I was like, really?
I mean, she's obviously a deeply traumatized person. And I do think her subconscious is a little buried away beneath an icy lake. And I think we'll learn more about her being her subconscious. And I think she'll remember more in the next book because she'll be forced to reckon with her daughter and saving her daughter.
I just really felt it would have made the book a little bit more worth it, have a little more direction if she had to deal with that in this book. Because we just get a lot of edging about the memories and like I feel like it forces the reader to sit through a lot of hissy fits where she's just angry and pushing people away. And we read that scene like over and over and over again. And like in the beginning, it made sense to me. And then there was kind of a point where like actually right around the time where she sees the dragon where I was like, okay, I feel like at a certain point we should have to reckon with this.
I do think there should have been more of a climax there. She's just so stubborn that she won't reckon with it, you know? Yeah. And that's where I started to hate the character because I'm like, oh my God, you can't just like totally ignore it. I understand. She's like, nope, that's not my life. I have things to do, places to be, but it was annoying.
Yeah.
But now she's completed her mission. And she now will have to reckon with it because she's no longer single-minded on killing that guy.
Yeah. But also Khan being like, we have to have a serious conversation. And then they never do it. I was like, okay, fuck you.
She keeps like derailing him with sex. I'm like, what the heck, guys?
I was like, really? Come on.
Motivations are sex and murder. And
yeah.
I'm like,
telling her she has a daughter isn't important enough that you can't just sit here, watch her finger herself. Like, I think it probably is.
Jesus.
I did like the introduction of the second dragon. It makes me sad because it makes me think, yeah, she's not getting the other dragon back, especially because it's seemingly in her head. But I do like that she's going to end up with another moon plume that needs her and how her vendetta against this guy brought her to that.
And I thought that was a great point in the book. And it also made a lot of sense that an animal would help her on her healing journey. I was like, yeah, that helps tons of people. That's like a total thing where you get to like heal and like care for something. And it reminds you of like the softer parts of yourself and also is like more of a safe place to relive some of these memories.
And they went through similar
Right. But
torture.
that's why why was that in the very last part of the book? We could have read a book where her healing and her memories were a part of it. And that was like the plot of the book and the purpose of the book. And then in book 2, we can think about the daughter, right? Like,
Yeah.
it just felt like the book would have made more meaningful strides if that had come a lot earlier.
And they did introduce the daughter really early. And she said, hey, uncle, help me get this crown off my head. I'm in love with the creator. And you're like, what the hell? Who's this girl? And she disappears forever.
That was a lot.
Can't figure it out.
Yeah.
That was unnecessary.
Yeah. And
We
I
didn't
hated
need
that
that.
scene because I look back on it too. And I'm like, he's really letting her live with this torturous person. It's almost like cruel.
And that makes me think, like, he keeps saying there's someone else who depends on you. And I'm like, maybe he doesn't know this is his daughter. So then who is this other person, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, because I just feel like we could have gotten a lot more of soft rave and healing rave. And then her being able to open up a little bit more to Khan would have made more sense. And their whole sexual relationship would have made more sense if she had been able to heal a little bit by herself, like with the animal.
Well, she like kept saying also like, I don't want kids. I don't want kids. I don't want kids. So now
how
when
I
she
knew
gets
she
this
had a
daughter,
kid.
it's going to be like, okay, what do you do with
That's
that?
actually how I knew she had a kid is because she was so against it. I was like, she had a kid in her previous life.
Yeah. I mean,
do I like the amnesia secret family thing? I don't know. I'm still undecided on that.
I hated it. That's where this book went from a 4-star to a 2-star is I was like, nope, the daughter thing, no, it's a no for me. I'm done.
I think there's a lot to look forward to because I think what you're talking about is you wish there was like a more reckoning with her emotions and a more reckoning with her past life. She'll be forced for sure to do that in the Scavenger King's fighting pits because she'll probably have to go there with Khan and she'll have to tell him about her experience as Firelark and then also trying to save her own daughter and their daughter. So, like that's going to force them to come together.
Khan's brother was maybe in love with her.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Also, the guy who tortured her also getting Gaizari and also being the bastard son. I was like, convenient. But
he's not the bastard son. Oh, I see what you're saying.
The Scavenger King,
or he is the bastard.
I was thinking of the whatever assassin guy who wanted to date Kaizari, apparently.
So creepy. No, not that one. But to me, I was just like, because so it's a series, that's fine. But every book is supposed to have their own plot and then also an overarching plot that connects every book. I just don't think this book had its very strong own plot because I was like, now we're sending her off into another book where she hasn't done a lot of healing. She hasn't really worked on herself. So like how is she going to do that and fight for her daughter at the same time? I almost just don't understand the place that she's like starting in because it's like, if we had done that in this book, okay, she's healed a little bit. I'm not saying it had to have like completed that and she's like ready and we're all done and we're going into it. But like, now I'm like, she's the same. She still hasn't reckoned with any of these memories. She has all these grief she's not ready to look at. Like, this was the soft book where she had alone time and time to heal and time to think by herself. How is she going to get that in book 2?
I do think we could have explored her prison fight thing a lot more at the beginning, and it would have made her a stronger character and learn about whoever Fallon is that obviously she lost. You know, I think there's things that could have made her stronger and likable. And then that would have made it where you could have done some of the reckoning in the second book. But because we didn't do that, it felt like there was something missing.
Because that's part of what I mean is like, that's what makes unlikable characters likable is when you slowly get little bit by little bit by little bit about them and why they're like this. Like that was the whole thing with Nesta's. And you're like, yeah, she's still a bitch, but like now I understand her and I can kind of get it and see that she has a soft side and that's nice. And this book, I just was like, we just need like crumbs. We need crumbs along to like feed us because that also builds the world because now you're getting to see her past and you get more of like how this is constructed and how the underworld works and like how she even came to be imprisoned in this prison in the first place, right? Like, it builds things out when you get those nuggets and makes the character
If
better.
it had had more of a Throne of Glass arc where the first book is all about her being an assassin and losing the person she loved, and then you build out a little more, like, yeah, I think that could have made it stronger for sure.
Because also the person who dies at the very beginning, I was like, I don't know that this was important.
Yeah, and I get the vibe that maybe the other girl, Fallon, was a romantic relationship, and the
Yeah.
other one I don't think was, and I feel like that needed a little bit more
Yeah.
clarification.
Like,
But
I think the book could have started with her being captured by Rexaros. I didn't really feel like it needed to start with the murder of a loved one because she's already an assassin and has enemies, and like this guy's a piece of shit. So I don't think you need that much more incentive. And then if he tortures you, of course you want to kill him. Like,
yeah,
like,
I think the point of this other one was like now everybody she loved, these two single people in her life who she has allowed to love her, have been gone. So that's why she's like on a rampage and why she won't let herself love Khan, blah, blah, blah. But
yeah.
yeah, there are definitely ways it could have been stronger. And I think we've all missed our calling as book editors, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Yes. But that's what I was thinking the whole time I read this book is she just needed one editor to have a really hard conversation with her. And then this book would be perfect.
But like I said, maybe the editors are like me and Catherine, and they're just like, no answer in the second book. I don't care. You know?
I really feel like I need to get to the bottom of it because this is like probably like the sixth or seventh fantasy book I've read where I was like, this just really needed an editor. And I'm like, where are they? What do they do? Are we not investing in editing anymore? Like, I just don't understand.
Look at who published this one, but I know Red Tower gets that complaint a lot.
Yeah.
Fourth Wing, Iron Flame specifically.
They definitely do get that complaint.
I mean, it's even happening with SJM now. Her last book was like, girl, what is
Okay, yeah. I guess
Yeah.
at some point you get rich and famous enough, they just let you do whatever.
They just say
and
yes.
That's what happened in her case, I feel. And yeah, that book sucked. And the internet widely agrees it sucked.
Yeah. So I'm just like, I just feel like the book industry needs to reckon with this. Like, we just, it's impossible to write a great book by yourself. It's impossible. There's a reason why people have editors.
You need editors.
Yeah.
PSA.
Okay, so there's a cliffhanger ending with Rave and Khan's daughter being captured by the Scavenger King. And it kind of fills in a little bit. Like, we kind of learn that somehow Rave is important. Like, she has this nickname, the Firelark. So, like, this king has some kind of like obsession with her. I mean, what did you guys think about the end in general?
I was confused how Rek knew who Firelark was, but of course he probably slummed it down there in the pits, being the psychopath he was. So I don't know. Yeah, I said my main question is still why I don't think she died from childbirth. So who stabbed her? Did she stab herself? Did the other king stab her? Like, what was that stab wound? How does the whole magic of the dragon, like putting herself in there work? Yeah, honestly, the Scavenger King and Kaisari are not my biggest questions at the moment. I'm just more interested in Rave still because so many weren't answered.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't have many questions at the end of the book. I had more of like hopes where I was like, I'm hoping to delve more into Firelark and learn more about this like very atrocious time period in her life. And also I wanted...
It didn't feel like a cliffhanger. It felt like, okay, I know it's coming in book 2.
Yeah, and I agree that the Kasari moment at the beginning of the book felt really unnecessary, and I was kind of thrown off where I was like, so who's this girl? And then she comes up and I get why it was there, but it felt like it didn't need to be there, like it could have been at the end. I don't know.
Oh my gosh, I just remember this. What happened to the Shade? There was they murdered the ruling family and kidnapped their princess. And then what happened?
They took over.
The brother took over.
And no one fought?
No.
Everyone was just like, yeah, we're ruled by the king now.
Well, they did say that it was a very patriarchal society and they were only really accepting.
They were already trying to marry her off.
They murdered the ruling family, including the heir. They murdered all of their advisors. And then kidnapped the princess, and no one gave a fuck. I find that hard to believe.
I mean, they probably did, but I think largely we don't know what happened in the Shade because Elowen doesn't know.
Yeah.
But that's part of why I'm just like, what?
I know. I fear we'll get more of that too. So we're gonna get a lot of backstories in book 2.
Oh,
Yeah. I really, really want to know more about the creator and why he was broken into pieces by the other gods because of fear, because of what are the reasons, and how that has impacted the world and how it has impacted the myths.
I also
And
want to know if
yeah,
anyone knew before Eowyn was given the crown that she could talk to all 4 creators, because that would make her sound like the most powerful person on the planet.
it seems like she was keeping things to herself basically her whole
Well,
life.
I know she
Yeah.
said like the crown made it where she couldn't hear things and she like never heard things. So maybe it's developed later because of her dragon. Who knows? But like that is still a question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm hoping that the myth building is better in the second book, where I learn more about the gods and more about the power structures and systems in place.
So here's the question. Casey, will you read the second book?
No.
What if we tell
Figures.
you it's like the greatest thing we've ever read?
I don't know if I believe y'all anymore. I mean, I don't think we can accurately predict what each other will like, to be honest.
Okay.
That's fair.
That's the point. Hey, I gave you the Crowns of Nyaxia.
That's true. That one did rock my shit.
It's just been a while since I've rocked your shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to be fair, we don't necessarily like any of your lit fic books.
No, I know you don't like them. That's fine.
I find appreciation for them and understand people read very different books than I do.
Yeah. Throwback. What was that book even called? My Year of Rest and Relaxation.
Yes.
This conversation ended up a lot like Bunny. I feel like just opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Reverse.
100% it did.
I don't like being the hater when you guys like a book that much.
No, it's fine. I get it. No, do I think that this is the best literary fiction, like best written novel of all time? No. I just like the story and I like the smut and I like the dragons and I
Like
like
I
the
said,
world.
there's an equation that'll get me to give 5 stars every time. And there has to be something really big to knock a star off. And this hit the equation.
It definitely
Okay.
did.
I said I was going to be more stingy with my 5 stars this year. I'm already off to like
A terrible start.
Well, my equation is apparently like psychologically disturbed women. So slash serial killers.
Slash no plot.
Yeah.
slash
the
cannibalism
plot.
involved.
Yeah, the plot is them killing people.
And eating people.
Yeah.
Okay, what about book recommendations? I know we've referenced a lot of books in this episode. So are there
Yeah.
any you would put forward as our book recommendations?
Oh,
I'm gonna pitch one, and I
all
think
right.
Casey will agree with this one. One Dark Window, because
Yes.
you know the thing in her head talking
Yeah.
to her, and I think that does it better than this book.
Yes.
Oh,
A very well
yeah.
done thing in her head. Yes.
At least in the other one, she knows it's in her head.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm gonna do 2. So the first one is the 5th season because heavy world building fantasy and you're just like stuck in mystery basically the whole time. But I think you're strung along and the world is built out in a better way. And the author does a better job of like creating that mystery and that tension. And then the second one is The Serpent and the Wings of Night, which is a little bit more in the fantasy genre, like more traditional fantasy. And just like does that kind of like Lost King, forbidden romance, dark daddy thing. And I think does it really well.
I will give you one that you mentioned. I think Priory of the Orange Tree. You similar
Did
lengths,
not like.
similar emphasis on dragons, similar questions and hard world building. I liked this book much better,
Yeah.
but they do feel kind of
Similar.
similar, except that Priory of the Orange Tree has a very like East Asian kind of vibe to it, and the love story is a lot more reciprocal.
Yes.
Yeah. And the love story is a bigger part of the book in general.
Yeah.
All right. Well, these are just our opinions. You got 2 very opposing perspectives on this book. But tell us where you came down. We want you to disagree and, talk about what you liked in the book. So you can do that at Busy Girls Pod. You can also go to busygirlspod.com, where we have compiled information about the podcast and our book recommendations.
Yeah. Give us 5 stars, rate and review. And with that, I'm Catherine.
I'm Caitlin.
And I'm Casey. Thanks for listening. And when you get a chance, take a break with the Busy Girls Book Club.